It's another wonderful time to spend a very beautiful time with us on the program Law and You, a fresh edition of that this week. And my name is Philip Omo Gyupong. You agree that we've been discussing very sensitive issue as regards the inheritance rights, and we dealt substantially about the issues of the Igiogbe, looking at the inheritance right under the Benin Customary law. And I've been having a very seasoned lawyer, a custodian of the law, to really analyze this substantially with us in the series we've been having on this. And he's still here with me for us to look at it, looking at the feedback that we're getting in that respect. And good to have you have an extension of what we couldn't finish up last week, as we have the presence of Ahigbe Osero, a legal practitioner.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. So, well, we couldn't finish up on what we started earlier. And as an extension, we're going to be looking at the feedback, because there were questions, that were raised that really we need to throw light into. But before we go there, there's this issue about the estate, of the deceased. We spoke about the Igiogbe, what can be applicable solely to the first-born male child of the deceased under the Benin Customary law. But outside that, what about the estate, the others aspect? What does the customary law prescribe concerning how it can be shared, or can it solely also be in the possession of the firstborn, a male child?
Okay, well, the law only singles out the dwelling house of the deceased, that it exclusively will go to the eldest surviving male child. So the other properties that constitute the estate of the deceased does not fall, or do not fall into that category. So once the dwelling house is bequeathed to the eldest surviving male child, the other properties can be distributed amongst the other children of the deceased. But I must point out that there are conditions, customary conditions, that must be met before the eldest surviving male child can take the Igiogbe. So there's a Supreme Court authority, the case of Arase and Arase, where Idigbe, JSC of blessed memory, stated that it is after the performance of the second burial of the deceased that the eldest surviving son can step in. So within the period where the burial has not been performed, he is not entitled to that property as of right, but what will normally happen is that he holds the property in trust for himself and on behalf of his siblings, prior to when the burial is performed. It is upon the performance of the second burial, in line with Idigbe's pronouncement in Arase and Arase, that the family can now hand over the Igiogbe to him. So, I needed to clarify the point that once the deceased passes on, the elder surviving son does not just step in, no.
Immediately?
He must perform the burial rites of his father.
Okay.
Yes. The second burial.
The second.
Yeah, I know I cannot pretend to say I know all those processes, but I know they have a first burial, a second burial. I know their traditional names for those burials, but it is upon the performance of the second burial that he can effectively step in.
Well, I think you've made it a little bit simpler, but another way to clarify is what is a second burial? Because if you say upon a second burial, it's expected that maybe after the first burial rites have been done.
Yes.
Are you referring to the first, after 1 year, when you have to do the first year anniversary? Or what do you mean?
No. I know they have Isoton.
Okay.
They have those names they call those.
Which happens at the time they are laying the remains to the mother earth.
Of course.
Okay.
So I know I may not, so that I do not say what I'm not too sure of.
Okay.
But I know you have things like Isoton, Isarafua, and all those kind of those names.
Yeah.
But I can't tell which one is the second burial now. But
Okay.
the authority says, the Supreme Court says, after the second burial. So depending on what the Beninese would define as the second burial.
Okay.
After that burial, the first son is entitled to step in to take over the Igiogbe.
Okay, we have who we can see as being in charge, of as in being the head of the family, for instance, and who can say, okay, whatever estate, whatever property will be held until the burial rites are concluded.
Yes.
Is it the head of the family that holds that?
Okay, so under Benin customary law, every family has a family head.
Yes.
Called the Okaigbe.
The Okaigbe.
Yes. So when the deceased passes on, the general Okaigbe of the family appoints another Okaigbe called the Okaigbe of the burial.
Oh yes.
And then the general Okaigbe gives instructions as to how the burial rites should, follow. So the Okaigbe of the burial defers to the general Okaigbe.
Okay.
So it is after the children of the deceased, led by the elder surviving son, have met the requirements of the family in terms of the burial rites, that you can say the burial has been effectively carried out.
Okay.
Now, until that happens, the property is held in trust.
In trust.
So the elder surviving son cannot lay a sole claim. He cannot claim the property solely. He holds the property in trust for himself and on behalf of the children of his father.
We've had issues where even some of the siblings who are females, I've had issues like this, where the first son is not buoyant enough, not having the wherewithal, to do the burial rites, and then they do it, and after the burial rites are concluded, the first son will want to claim, what belongs to him by right, the Igiogbe. And in the course of this, we've had issues where, some of the female children will, family members will be asking for a payback of what they spent before such a first child or first male child will take over. How does the law settle this amicably?
You see, the privilege the elder surviving son has, for want of a better phrase, it came with him from heaven. You can't take it away.
Okay.
In fact, there's a matter that got to the Supreme Court, the case of Ogiamie and Ogiamie, where one of the siblings of the eldest surviving son challenged the eldest surviving son and said, before our father died, this property was gifted, right? And that the property no longer constitutes an Igiogbe. In that matter, the younger sibling could not prove that the property was gifted. And the court came to a finding that the eldest surviving son is the person entitled to the property in the absence of any encumbrance to that property in the lifetime of the deceased. Now, who performs those burial rites?
Who finances it? Doesn't count.
You cannot. So it doesn't appear to seem like we are saying that you contract the financing of the burial right, therefore I submit my inheritance to you. No. Now there are even other authorities where the court said, even if the other surviving son is an idiot, or he's a lunatic, or he's not financially capable
to do that,
the family ought to preserve the property for him, even when he's an infant. The property ought to be protected and preserved for him.
Okay, but I said that because you made mention of the fact that not until the first male child, goes through this activities of the burial right, the second burial.
Yes.
And it takes demand. There are demands.
Of course.
And such demands mostly, are done with money. You know, a lot of materials that they say they must buy, you don't get it on the street without paying for it. So in such a case where the first male child doesn't have the wherewithal to do this, and then the other siblings, you know, rally around and did this on his behalf, and then later go back and say that, well, not until the first male child, you know, gives back what they gave, they wouldn't allow that. So issues like this are popped up.
No, they can't do that.
How can you resolve this issue in that regard?
They can't do that.
They don't have the right to do
They
that.
can't do that.
Okay.
They can't do that. No, it's a
So
customary.
is it a matter of litigation?
Well, it could be a matter of litigation relating to monies spent and, you know, contractual. I gave you money, you spent it on the burial, pay me back. But it cannot translate into saying that because I provided the money spent during the course of the burial, the property now goes to me. No, it's not possible.
Okay.
It's not possible. So that's a tacit way of trying to disinherit the elder surviving male child. And I don't know of any court in the land that will accede to that.
Okay.
At best, we could say that there is a contractual relationship as between them for monies that were, you know, given, but that will not mean that you now contract away the Gilbert to, you know, another child. No, the custom, you will be making a mockery of the custom. And remember, this custom it's a beautiful custom. Remember, we tried to explain this the last time to say that there are certain things the elder surviving son ought to do by taking that property. You know, he has to continue his father's legacies. He has to ensure that his father's wishes as regards that property continue. So it's not something he can just wake up one day and say, oh, just give me some money, I give it to you. Because you perform the burial, you step into my shoes. It would be akin to the pot of porridge, selling one's birthright.
Okay. Why we allow that to settle? Let's go back to the aspect of the estate outside the Igwe. You know, for us to resolve this amicably among siblings that would have such issues. And even why the eldest, you know, may want to apportion, you know, the property, the estate, the way he feels like it's better off for him, you know, it may not go down well with the other siblings. So how does it do it? Or should he do it? Should it be with the Okaigbe and the other elders? Or does he just call the shot?
No, of course. The elders, the Okaigbe and the elders of the family, they have a big role to play. So once the Igwe is taken away from the entire estate of the deceased, the elders must ensure that each child of the deceased is taken care of, that the other properties distributed amongst them. So they can do this if the man had 3 wives, for example.
Of course, polygamous, looking at that.
So you take care of wife A, wife B, wife C. You pick a child from each line. The law calls it per steppiece, right? So each of those lines, you give them, you distribute the properties among them. But the idea, where there will be dispute, is where a particular line in the family is giving choice properties to the detriment of the others. Of course, there will be disputes. But again, I must take you back to a foundational issue that if the man had taken care of his estate, his assets before his demise, there will be no dispute when he passes on.
So it's advised that while in your lifetime, you should make hay while the sun shines.
Make hay while the sun shines.
Okay.
Make hay while the sun shines. Write a will. Create a trust. You could even distribute your assets in your lifetime and register the property in the names of the children you want to have them. You can create a deed of gift and ensure it is registered. You could even incorporate the fact that you have created a gift over a certain property, incorporate it in your will.
Okay.
Register the will.
Okay. In case you're just watching, it's Law and You, and we're looking at inheritance rights under the Benin Customary law. And I've been speaking with Akigbe Oserogo, who is a legal practitioner. We had questions raised from previous editions as regards this, and I got a question from a lady who would want to be anonymous, and she asked, concerning the Gyugbe rights, that belongs to the first male child, what about is it applicable to the first male child mother property?
Well, no. So it is even inequitable that the elder surviving son takes his father's dwelling house and then the mom's property. Now, the reason why, and I must emphasize this so that the elder surviving sons who are listening to me will get this behind in their mind, that
we take to reason
that the reason why the custom allows that property to be given to the eldest male child, is for him to continue his father's legacies. Now, what legacies are there with the mother's property? None. So, for example, now in the father's property, you have the uhure, you have the family shrine and all that. You don't have such with the mom's property.
Because that's what the Gyugbe symbolizes.
Yes. So you cannot now, a woman, put in clearer terms, a woman does not have an Gyugbe. So the equitable thing to do is to distribute her property amongst her children. And for goodness sake, if the elder surviving male child has taken the Gyugbe, then we should allow the other children to benefit from their mother's property, especially the women. Especially the women. Because this is where the family heads have roles to play to ensure that everybody is satisfied with the process of sharing, so that the issues that will emanate, issues of the bickering here and there, even resulting in court cases, will be grossly, greatly minimized.
Okay, yeah. but in a case where there's just a property,
in a case where there's,
because you made mention of the women, especially the women. In the case where it's just a property, let's say just a house, does he take himself away and allow the women, for instance, where he even have male siblings? How does he settle that?
That will be within the discretion of the Okaigbe of the family.
Oh.
Yeah, so they could.
You mean the Okaigbe, their decisions can also count?
Of course.
The demise of the mother?
Yeah, that's, everybody comes from a family.
Okay.
The man comes from a family. The woman also comes from a family. There's a family head in her family.
Okay.
So who will naturally superintend over the process of the burial and all. You have to also carry them along. That is if, of course, her husband has passed on.
Okay, but does he have the backing of the law that the first son must, take the advice of the elders and the Okaigbe? Is there a prescription by law?
That is where the second burial issue comes up. So if you do not follow the prescription of the Okaigbe,
I'm talking about the mother's property.
The mother's property.
Yes.
So
does he have to take the advice, or he just uses his discretion?
No, he must. He must. And that is where society has, that's where we've missed the point. The young chaps are now looking away from the elders. The elders are paving the way. They are creating a direction for us to follow. And the custom is beautiful. But the young chaps, they've derailed from the process. For goodness sake, how can the elder surviving son proceed to bury his mother without the permission of the elders of the family? He can't do that. He needs their support. He needs their guidance. He needs them to tell him what to do and what not to do.
But that is different from sharing the property that belongs to the mother.
Yeah, so it is after the burial, the performance of those rites, that you can now start talking about sharing of the property.
A situation where the elders, some elders become sentimental. Are you saying that the elders should play to the gallery?
You see, there is no one size fits all, right? Of course, we've had situations where the elders are just waiting for the person to pass on.
Of course, yes.
And they are going to, give the children a lot of headache.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but there's always a way around it.
And I think at that point, there should be discretion, resting upon the first male child. to do as he pleases, that will bring about decorum within the family,
Of course.
within the siblings,
Of course.
as regards the property of the mother. In that case,
of course. But you see, I will not agree
Okay.
to him, being nasty to them, being rude to them, and all that. As much as possible,
Okay.
to avoid unnecessary bickering.
Okay. I think.
Yes,
Go ahead.
he should carry them along. Of course, I know also that there are some elders that could be unreasonable. That's fine, but there must be a way out. As much as possible, even the Bible says it, follow peace with all men.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that could go a long way to answer the question of the lady that raised that. Now, let's look at the question raised by Osage Charles. He made mention of the fact that there is a case he is aware of, where, a particular man who's couldn't lay hold to the inheritance of his late father because the mother was not legally married to the father. Now, under the Benin Customary law, how does the law settle this?
Well, beyond Benin Customary law, the law has since moved past all that. So the former position of the law is that when a man dies, the children that would inherit the property are the children of the wife he contracted the statutory marriage with.
Oh, really?
So that's the old position. So cases like Riadadevo, Cole and Cole, Alake and Pratt, Cole and Akinyemi, and all those cases.
Okay.
Now, the point is this. So how did we get into all that? The British, we were colonized by the British. So when they came to Nigeria, they brought in this thing of a one man, one wife. And that marriage must be a statutory marriage. So they didn't want a situation whereby the man is allowed to practice polygamy. But you see, why would you deprive a child from inheriting a property based on the nature of marriage contracted as between his parents? That was the old law. But the new position is this. The Constitution makes it clear. You cannot deprive a man of any benefit based on the circumstances of his birth. So you cannot say that, because his father did not marry the mother, as it were, he cannot inherit the father's property.
Even though he's the first male child.
That is completely wrong. What is important is that the legitimacy of that child is accepted by the father. So if the father says, this is my son, he sent him to school, took care of him, the child bears his father's name, there is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that the father denounced, the legitimacy of that child, then what stops the child from inheriting his father's property? So the marriage of the mother and the father does not have anything to do with the child as it relates to the right of that child to inheritance.
Okay, well, we have the text line and the WhatsApp line on the screen, writing on the screen. Please, you can do well to send your responses via the text line. Of course, that doubles as the WhatsApp line where you can send in your chats. And as we get your reactions, we could also use that to pan out another edition in order to respond to the questions being raised. I still have Akigbe Oserowo, a custodian of the law, with me. But as we wrap up, let's look at the way forward in that regard, most especially as it pertains to quelling issues of litigations in that regard, and the need for this to be done while in your lifetime instead of waiting for issues to pop up at one's demise. Your advice to the viewers.
It's sad having lived an upright life. There are some people in society, names withheld, when they pass on, the issues that arise from their death is amazing. A young chap could just wake up from nowhere and say, that man is my father, was my father rather. What is the intention? The intention is property, to acquire property. But if the man put his affairs in order during his lifetime, it would save him all avoid the embarrassment when the inevitable occurs. So write a will, create a trust, set your affairs right, and that solves the problem. Doing none of these, of course, will create room for so much problem when the inevitable occurs.
Thank you so much for taking our time to be part of this, and this is where we call it a wrap, and basically we expect and rely on your reactions via the WhatsApp and of course the text line. My name is Philip Omo Gyupon. See you on the next edition.